HUBs that provoke. This book is trying to air some of my views, perhaps uncommon and controversial, about a few issues that we constantly grapple with. All my observations may not be fully and unquestionably right, nor will they be a farce, and completely devoid of merit. Written by Roy T. James. Part 11. Chapter 63. The Future of the World of Beliefs. The present world, especially the overall global picture contrasting the highly developed countries with all the other ones, reminds me of my childhood days in a countryside where I grew up with a good bunch of boys. I was a sickly child who did not have the physique and skills necessary to pursue manly diversions like climbing trees or jumping into ponds. We had a good collection of fruit-bearing trees in our village, whereas my brother, who is only a year older, was of good constitution, as well as adept at such activities. Loitering around with playmates, whenever we happened to come across a tree rich in good fruits, I and my friends, who all were of the comparable build, would make an appeal to my brother and his cohort to pluck a few. My brother with a couple of close buddies would make a face, and would reluctantly consent, of course after making us agree to do some odd jobs, like their share of the housework, spadework or other errands for them. They would then climb a few of the trees, pluck some fruits, taste a few, throw down a lot fewer for the waiting crowd and show an unhappy face with loud comments, "Rest of the fruits are not ripe enough, wait for a few days." We, of course, used to relish whatever that came on our way and wait for the next visit. The same story will be repeated thereafter, I with my weak friends managing to do with the few unripe ones. Moreover, the blanket judgment about the unworthy nature of fruits would be remaining as a permanent sanction, preventing us from making further attempts on our own, till subsequent visits. It took some time for us to realize that this is a perfect plan for the climbers to relish and enjoy the fruits for many days to come, without having too much of a need to part with the spoils. The above thought keeps coming to me, because something is profoundly wrong with the way we exist as a world. More so, now, look at this. We have two different groups of people. One group follows a progressive lifestyle and lives in good comfort, and they find life both desirable and gratifying. The other group, in fact, a large multitude, follows a lifestyle which in no way can be considered as anything close to the desired. They can be easily spotted too, being always trying to emulate the progressive, though they keep pretending otherwise. The progressive group on their part is constantly belittling whatever are the significant parameters of the lifestyle they followed prior to achieving the progressive status, terming it a reprehensible mode of living, which is readily accepted by all the others, finding that it amounts to rating their mode of living as great. In addition, they also heavily discourage the rest of the world from attempting to adopt any of those, resorting to both coercive and disruptive methods. Rest of the world, however, though would be desirous of catching up with the progressive, is not at all in a position to offer a challenge. It, therefore, is a losing battle. The progressive ones continue to remain so, and the others, relegated further. Obviously so, since the very lifestyle that was of significance in hoisting the progressive ones to that status is now being held repugnant. Moreover, those states do not miss an opportunity to extol the virtues of the traditional lifestyle, though it was only by daring to break with the traditional that they did attain progress. A couple of examples of such discouragement, of course, worded differently, might take the following form. Going behind comfort is termed as the ultimate pursuit of material self-interest that each of us can show. The fact that our society is in a state of progress thanks to the effort our forefathers took for making life more and more comfortable is conveniently forgotten. Lesser the desire we show for betterment, the more we are appreciated, emulated and held in awe. That this applause will encourage us to remain glued to our present state, forfeiting whatever opportunities of progress may arise, is conveniently forgotten. In fact, this is why we are what we are. That is, quite happy with where we are, and, whenever someone tries to break status quo, oppose with harshest contemporary measures. Except that if the results are undoubtedly, say advantageous, we may not express heavy discomfort. Why? What is making us so wary of change? The root cause of the dismal state of many countries, including ours. When I pose such questions to myself, what came out is this. on all matters of discernible, actual, things or ideas. Humans are not at all worried about a change, even once serious and cumbersome precautions are necessary, or the after effects are earth-shaking. Whereas, when it concerns things that are not easily made out, like spiritual entities and related notions, beliefs, they are horrified of changes, and they will go to any imaginable extent, just to put a hurdle. Why? What particular benefit we are deriving from such entities that are not easily discernible, which is making us so averse to change, notwithstanding our happy experiences in the material domain, where a change always resulted in better conditions of living. To get an answer for the above, I asked a fundamental question: what exactly is a belief? The answer I encountered most often is that we create certain thoughts to anchor our understanding of the world around us, and so, once we have found those thoughts useful, we will tend to persevere with those, as a belief. So, if belief has something to do with our understanding of the world around us, it should have undergone certain radical changes, while our lifestyle, as well as the world around us, were constantly transforming. But that doesn't happen. Not only that our beliefs are not at all showing any change, but also the naturally changing ambience is continuously being put to severe stress for accommodating itself comfortably within the mostly outmoded beliefs, constantly changing the definition of all spiritual entities to suit whatever developments we have in material sphere, such that the ludicrous tales of yesteryears still remain relevant, is an example. Thus, if beliefs have nothing to do with our understanding of the world around us, what does it do? To answer, let us see what role the beliefs play in our life, how, and when. The answer I encountered most often is that we live our lives based on what we believe. Also, we tend to be irrational on all matters connected with beliefs. The moment I started examining the truth of this statement, I was immediately bombarded with a stream of abstract thoughts. Yes, this is what separates us from all other forms of life. More than whatever we may actually do in our lives, the beliefs that precede our actions are the foundation of all that we cherish, dream, become, and accomplish. From the morning rituals that we go through to greet the world each day, to the inventions that we use to make our lives better, or to the technology that destroys life through war, our personal lifestyles, community customs, religious ceremonies, and entire civilizations are based on our beliefs. Conceit, beliefs maketh man. But what exactly do beliefs do? Here I am at a loss. I think, had beliefs be having a defined part to play in our lives, we wouldn't be having this difficulty in identifying its precise role. I also think belief is the only thing that differentiates humans from all other forms of life, everything else being present in some form, in all species of life. If so, what is found in all other forms of life, but not in humans? The answer is not easy. Anything and everything connected with humans is there in the animal world, of course in differing form, shape, or size. The only area where one can see distinctive differences is mating, especially the post-mating commotion arising specifically from the female side. Belief can, therefore, be considered as the human answer to post-mating agony. In other words, none of the commotions that would have resulted happens to be apparent to us, since all of that is being absorbed by our beliefs. The commotion, instead of manifesting as a sexual message, which we are uncomfortable with, can now appear as acute expressions of certain beliefs. As generations went by, we seem to have forgotten what these beliefs stood for. Thus our forefathers came to have unlimited scope for allaying this agony, resulting in generations where such a thing as post-mating agony is unknown. Also man, being an animal with altruistic leanings, presumably has devised a battery of defensive steps to guard against none of those giving away the true intent. Once we understand this, everything, like having lasting peace in our society, is child's play. Coming back to our topic, the progressive group of nations happens to lock onto progress as a belief, while the other nations chose some other topic like violence, harmony, language, faith, etc., towards the same. The populace of former countries is accustomed to living with extreme difficulties in the name of progress. That of the latter will also do the same, but for other abstract reasons like philosophy, religion, or language. This, needless to say, is likely to result in a large gap between the progressed nations and others, making coexistence difficult as time goes by. Also, it is likely sooner than later, since the differences are continuing unabated. Note, here, the word belief should not be confused with passive emotions of faith, feeling, notion or opinion one may entertain on matters of one's choice. It denotes a somewhat fierce attachment to whatever one may be seized of. Also, we encourage such vehement attachments, with honours and awards, except when the attachment results in uncontrolled violence, that if we're in the harm's path. Chapter 64. Do we need experts? A long-standing doubt. One question I am frequently confronted with is about science books. Take any topic. Most of the books will be meant for the average reader and may contain all the information necessary for practical adaptation or exploitation of a concept by our society, thereby benefiting the common good. Such books may be quite a few in numbers, its authors found to be from almost all walks of life. But there may be a few books meant mainly for the experts, and referred frequently by those desiring to be one. Mostly such books examine one facet of the chosen topic and examine it from many perspectives, each vastly different from all the other ones. Such books may be few and far between, and the authors generally belong to what is popularly known as the academic community, sometimes called absent-minded professors. Have a closer look at the books that are cherished by the experts. 3 things stand out. 1. All that is mentioned in these books get appreciated or applauded much, maybe getting rewarded also handsomely, and its authors basking in glory for many days to come. 2. In some time, another book may appear, proposing a new set of principles to replace the things mentioned above. The new doctrine could even be in total opposition to the much celebrated earlier ones. But this also will get appreciated and applauded much, and, all those who were basking in glory for the earlier one, swiftly replaced by a new set of experts. 3. The greater the impact the introduction of the book made to our society, the smoother its replacement by another new book. I can hardly remember any desperation our society evince for want of certain things, or of the significant contributions made by a book when it is being quietly displaced by another one. We even go to the extent of holding it responsible for much other else that necessitated the substitute. The present outcry against chemical fertilizers, or the clamour for an antibiotic-free living, amply demonstrates this. The book we saw at the beginning, one that was meant for the ordinary, continues to remain in its silent but effective use. Of course, in a few cases, there might be a few, not so insubstantial changes. What can we learn from this? Doesn't this point to the need to change our understanding of the word expertise? That it is rather transcendental or dynamic in appearance, and liable to vagaries of time. Already a similar idea is in the air, that we need to have a more inclusive education pattern with importance given to all aspects of character building, be it in classrooms, or in playgrounds, or elsewhere. This is one more reason to be so. One should excel not only in the classrooms but also on the playgrounds and all other places of interest. And for a healthy society, this should be made to happen naturally. I think we can ensure that if we make certain changes to our idea of excellence, or whatever we are striving for, what we are doing now amounts to applauding talent in one particular field while overlooking all others. Instead of that, we can consider as great whatever displays a wide spectrum of talents, simultaneously overlooking any ability limited in its horizon. Another reason to abstain from the extremes. Chapter 65. Do we need new wisdom? That too from a new philosophy. What can explain our failure to confront the presence of disturbances in human societies, be it in political, social, or whatever? Doesn't it point to the need for philosophical change? Is this century going to be an era of philosophical change? Philosophy is from philo, love, and sophia, wisdom. It is a Greek word meaning lover of wisdom, philosopher, to contrast with another Greek word meaning wise man, sophist. But are we becoming any wiser, especially since we humans are always longing to go deeper and deeper, where we see lesser and lesser? To be wise, one need to know what real things are, among them what is good for whatever one's need is, and how to think such that one reaches the exact answers to those questions. These 3 divisions of wisdom correspond to the 3 major subsets of philosophy, namely, metaphysics, ethics, and logic. on our appreciation of which, in fact, hangs the fate of our society. The earliest civilization to seek answers seems to be the Greek. It is possible that there were many civilizations, even earlier than Greece. It is also possible that those people were quite self-contained and happy, and having no problems in life, since there is no record of such extensive questions and answers about the conduct of the most fundamental activity of life, living. Whichever way the Greek acquired the answers, whether by travelling to Africa for studying with the wise men of ancient Egypt, as suggested by some experts, or by their own vision, they created the Greek Golden Era. Many records of ancient wisdom, almost all of those belonging to rather esoteric transactions, remain, and time and again, analysis and dissertations of these topics appear in our midst, garnering the interest, mainly of scholars. Whatever direction philosophy took in Greece and thereafter in the rest of the world, can be seen to be closely dependent on the state of natural science, what real things are prevailing there. The idea of matter having an identifiable and definite internal structure, and the possibility of predictable interactions and responses seem to have guided the growth of philosophy into various branches, each having its independent roles and functions. Many years later, the accumulated growth in such a way resulted in the Industrial Revolution. It brought in some lasting changes by making the records of our wisdom universally accessible. Physics kept on going forward in leaps and bounds, taking us along, and we continued to dwell on ethics, logic, and all, keeping pace with physics. Hence we happen to have distinct concepts of good bad, light dark, true false, etc. Such firm demarcations never posed a difficulty, since, in the physical world, that is what we have been experiencing. Things can have their attributes or properties specified clearly, like lighter than water, or heavier, those go faster than sound, or slower, etc. And whatever abstract notions we held about our social interactions, like truth, falsehood, esteem, etc., were rather clear thoughts, which could be easily demarcated, more or less in agreement with our idea of reality. Now that physics is likely to face a change, or is already into it if quantum effects are to play a part, we need to have a fresh look at our philosophy, and everything that follows. Won't real things now look different? Don't we need to rehash ethics, logic, and all, to keep pace with that change? And hence we need to have rather indistinct concepts of good bad, light dark, true false, etc. A total change in our ideas of morality, such that any action can either get termed as a worthy act, or despised as a bad thing, based on certain parameters. Say, a quantum change in philosophy. I haven't come across such questions anywhere. The recurring turbulence in our societies clearly indicates that something is amiss, which is beyond issues. I admit, we constantly find a few issues always dormant in a society, like linguistic, ethnic, dietary, religious or political differences, and at any time we attribute the current disturbances to one among those. Perhaps this is where the causes lie, in our propensity to find a cause and be contented. We need the wisdom of a new philosophy and its subsets to create fresh standards of morals, ethics, and all. Chapter 66 Is there a need to revisit evolution? Theory of evolution describes the formation of sea and land animals. If we look from the perspective of an altruistic animal, different results emerge. Evolution is a great theory, I agree. It is the greatest theory in all of the science since it tries to answer one of the most difficult of all questions. Why are we what we are? This theory gives a good explanation for much of the pertinent questions concerning life. Essentially, by providing a logical answer to one question, how the first simplest form of life gave rise to all of the huge diversity we see today. How life appears in various forms from bacteria to trees to blue whales. I have a few questions. What makes our scientists so certain about this? Where is the evidence? Is it like this? Given enough time, these changes mount up and lead to the appearance of new species and new types of an organism. Those small, rather imperceptible changes happen continuously. Can we say, as the first step, few worms became fish. Then some of the fish came onto land and developed 4 legs, and those 4-legged animals grew hair. Sometime after, few of them started walking around on 2 legs, called themselves humans and discovered evolution. Now you see, evolution is not a phenomenon of the past. It is an active process occurring even now. The emergence of new strains of influenza, drug-resistant cancer cells, and pesticide-resistant insects demonstrate that the genetic makeup of populations changes over time. Within the population of influenza viruses, for example, some viruses show resistance to the drugs used to treat them. Over a period of time, the resistant viruses survive and reproduce, and new influenza vaccines must be created to treat the newly evolved strain. Another example of evolution in action can be seen in laboratory experiments. Using rapidly reproducing species such as bacteria, yeast, and fruit flies, scientists have shown that altering the environmental conditions in which these organisms exist can induce genetic changes within the population. But what about humans? What signs can we see here? I think we are looking at humans as another form of life. No, humans differ from all other forms of life. They keep finding problems for themselves, in the shape of solutions to existing problems. This act, what could be loosely termed thinking, effectively turns human into an altruistic animal. And we constantly see our ideas and thoughts undergoing transformation continuously. In the visible sphere, this can be most easily felt as fashion. More inclusive aspects of such a change are what keeps our society constantly engaged at any given time. Presently, the attraction we show to everything natural, or our predilection with the idea of democracy, can be seen as examples having the capability to involve all of the humanity, all of which essentially is nothing but wayside stops for evolution. I have another doubt here. Not all humans subscribe to every new thought, however popular that may become. If we are to think of two categories of humans, one who welcome and move with the change, and the other who oppose such changes tooth and nail, what future shall befall on each? Won't the progenies of those who presently oppose all the natural changes to enjoy the prevailing climate of comfort find themselves grossly out of place with the future? And the successors of those who accommodate themselves in the agonies of the present find themselves better equipped for the future? I have one more doubt. Even when people subscribe to new thoughts, all such ideas do not get the same reception. Some are readily accepted by our society, some might get only a lukewarm response, and few others face real opposition. How will this affect our future? If the ideas readily accepted by us now be of great help, and the ideas we oppose now be of no significance, there shall not be any reason to worry. But if it isn't, which is quite a possibility since one can never know the future significance of an idea now, we are in for trouble. Assuming that ideas are the natural products of human minds, shouldn't we be giving equal importance to all the thoughts? There is still another doubt. On what basis are we putting man towards the end of evolution? Why can't the living organisms start with a man? Isn't it more likely that an organism that can do all its functions of life and living, with fewer amounts of hardware, lesser environmental load, and reduced requirements of input, is a later version? Thinking in this way, doesn't it look more natural for all other forms of life to follow man? Yes, there is a need to revisit evolution. Chapter 67. What is rational about mythology? Is our idea of mythology right? We take mythology as stories people tell to explain nature, history, or customs, especially those ones that do not stand to good logic. This, in fact, is a feature of every culture. Most of these involve personification of nature or its elements, or other matters of interest. These matters were, of course, been a topic of our studies. Based on the above precepts, I think, we have been continuously formulating different views of mythology and its constituents. Thus we have humorism, myths as deformed, oblique accounts of historical events; allegory, myths as a rather hazy representation of natural phenomena; personification, myths as inanimate objects, forces in all our, particularly hidden desires, brought to life; and ritual theory, myths as an enlivened form of rites. What I could notice in the above picture is that in none of the views, myths seem to be doing something necessary for our survival, or meet some of our metabolic needs. If so, how or why did myth survive all the years? What function does it have, as far as human life goes? For finding an answer to this question, let us see what function we have been doing all these years, and what part did myths play in it? The single most significant job our race performed all these years happened to be that of finding answers to questions. How did myths help us in that? Normally problem solving goes thus. If we understand the question and are well equipped with all that is needed, like calculators, scientific instruments, or computers, our own know-how, or environmental requirements, we shall proceed with our solution. Else, if appropriate, we shall go ahead with our preparations. If not, we will be marking the question for future reference. If we happen to get confronted with more such issues, we grade those, and the ones needing urgent attention shall get additionally marked. Now you see, how effective one is in finding answers depend heavily on one's capability to have differential, easily recognizable marking of problems with its attributes. In short, we may end up with many textbooks, references, notebooks, or other records with various markings, each indicating to the necessity and range of further attention. In fact, it is this habit of keeping permanent records is the one that enables us to quickly resolve an issue. Now imagine, over time, without all these expedients like notebooks, symbols, or language. This is when our ancestors confronted these questions. What would have been their stance when it came to allocating priorities? How would they have marked those questions to help in plan resolution, and many other indications, like the need for further deliberations or dismissal? Isn't it possible that something of prominence is linked to the challenges they faced, such that each one of those questions gets addressed at the appropriate time? What better method can be thought of, other than inventing a connection with the heavenly bodies that are always there, that too with remarkable prominence, and what they hoped for, happened? Those questions remained in the forefront of social transactions, not only affecting all facets of human life and living, but also the rigors of the afterlife. Many years later, when reading, writing, and books became popular, all such questions and the entities representing those happened to be the ones subjected to scrutiny first, losing the divine status to begin with. Rather than imagining that our forefathers were naive enough to be fooled into according heavenly status for, say, astronomic objects, we need to compliment them for taking on their questions in the most effective way. We can proudly say, they invented astrology, a subset of mythology, to keep all these questions alive. It seems they were sure, in due course of time, a future invention, say a telescope, will start the hunt for the ultimate answers. In short, mythology becomes the most scientific step our forefathers have taken, a dynamic placeholder for the substantive issues to be tackled by a society. Why are we confronting mythology in an unscientific manner? Why are we not able to see this simple and elegant logic? As soon as myths complete their function of presenting a new question to the appropriate future, it should have been disappearing. But why do the myths survive as myths, at least in a mutilated version? I think this happens so mainly because we are utilizing mythology to fill our need for the irrational, of which I have written in many of my hubs. Chapter 68: How do human societies differ? And which always do they match? Human society is everywhere arranged into smaller chunks that are generally always at unease with each other. How could this have happened? The human race is organized into different societies, many of which join together and form rather independent groups called nations. This kind of grouping might have happened due to historical reasons, geographical similarities, and other factors that make living together a necessity. If we further examine these, in the light of political, social, or economic convenience, more reasons will emerge pointing to the natural formation of every nation, though the principal cause in each case may differ. In all such grouping, the societies joining together share a similar character, ideals, and priorities. It is, therefore, possible to consider each country as a separate society of societies, where the internal differences between its constituents have been overshadowed by the need to put up a cohesive front to face the challenges. What differentiate these societies? How does a human belonging to one country differ from one belonging to another? Or what makes people belonging to one country identify with each other while injecting separation between people of different countries? If we observe carefully the character and behavior of people constituting each society, there is no difference as far as rational reactions go. All people, irrespective of their country of origin, approach any issue of importance to one's life and living in a comparable manner. The driving force remains more or less the same. The range or influence of the driving force, the expected benefits, the possible retardants, as well as the diversions, are also similar across human societies from different countries. Hence, as far as rational responses go, there is hardly any difference between people of different countries or societies. All countries match with one another in some way. But, when it comes to reactions of the irrational plane, that is, both the responses to irrational signals and the crazy reactions to normal events, human societies differ a lot. What is of value, what and how much of it is tolerable, and many other parameters vary substantially. Something considered repugnant in one country may be part of the most respected lifestyles in another country. No countries match with one another, as far as such things go. Naturally, there arises an attractive force among certain societies, as well as a repulsive force among certain other societies, to eventually form some kind of a union of societies with similar reactions to irrational signals, or of societies with similar irrational response to all signals. This, I think, is the true explanation of how nations are born. If that is so, what causes societies or nations to differ? If all that people want to do is to find answers to their questions, why should we have different societies or different countries? To answer this, let us observe our nations, the de facto human societies, a bit more closely. Some nations can be seen to be always running behind certain customs, traditions, or other vagaries, overlooking much pain and discomfort. Some other countries may follow a totally different path, continuously exploring fresh alternatives. That too, with least regard to both the existence of an actual need for a changed approach and the inconveniences faced while implementing frequent alterations. As a result, some of the countries get labelled as traditional or backward, and few others as modern or progressive, with the majority of the countries occupying varying positions in between the two. How does this happen? What made people choose what they chose? We have already seen, as far as rational reactions go, there isn't much difference. All people are driven by quite predictable forces, which can be easily understood by resorting to certain steps, rather, a scientific approach. Even for that, there isn't much difficulty, as this is quite a well-documented area. Whereas when it comes to irrational responses or reaction to irrational things, nothing is predictable. Over long periods of time, people with similar such responses would have grouped together for many reasons, like the need to save themselves from opposing reactions, or to enhance whatever good feelings they happen to have. On attaining more permanence, such rather informal gatherings would have come to be identified as separate societies called religions, and the collection of a similar few becoming a nation. Both, in fact, amount to nothing but the grouping of people with comparable outlook in the irrational plane. What we can conclude from the above is that it is the irrational leanings or response that can differentiate between people, both for the purpose of unification and for the sake of opposition. All through history, nations have been at war with each other. One nation trying to subdue the other, and the other one resists. And it is still continuing, if what we see abundantly in the present-day diplomacy is anything to go by. Perhaps we would achieve success, and international skirmishes will become a thing of the past, if only we let international diplomacy be guided by our irrational needs, desires, and responses, instead of the active mismanagement, well facilitated by all countries. Chapter 69 The Blanks in our Past. Though humans are millions of years old, why there is no history before a few thousand years BC? What differentiates us from the rest of life? How come we are well disposed to inventing both feelings and its causes, where none exist? And how the answers to these questions will lead us to whatever is unique, as far as human nature goes. How we became humans. The earliest of human ancestors appeared 5 to 7 million years ago, so proclaims experts, regarding the beginnings of the human race. They then spread to all parts of the globe. When and where did such human-like beings acquire and show the telltale marks of humans? Creative thinking and symbolic transactions that can lead to a disconnect between the thoughts and the deeds, or the propensity to think without the need to act, or the tendency to jump into any act without thinking. Otherwise, Were the humans in all respect right from the first day? If so, why do we have this large gap from millions of years back when human race began, to a few millenniums BCE since when we have some kind of signs of human existence, with no trace of the race? And why did the trace suddenly appear, when it appeared? A great many scientists are seized of the issue of human origins, but the prevailing sentiment is one of uncertainty or confusion. Many ideas are taking rounds, a fundamental shift in brain wiring, changes in the conditions of life, and the new experiences brought by the use of symbolic representation are some of the prime ones. The blank inner past. As I mentioned above, our known history goes back only to a part of this long period. A few thousand years BCE is the earliest time, of which we have some idea, based on archaeological evidence. What happened to the millions of years our ancestors had already spent? Why is there no evidence pointing to some apparition resembling a human? If we are to look for a link between our earliest ancestors who lived millions of years back, and the earliest identifiable humans who lived a few thousand years BCE, what should we be looking for? Let us examine these questions in the light of humans having a clear nature, specific to the race. I think as long as nature was natural in form, no evidence of a living being's existence need be remaining forever. We can't see any remnants of scores of creatures that finish its life in short intervals, many generations of which would have passed through in one man's lifetime. So also is the case of humans before the days of historical records. We have no data about their living style. Why isn't it blank now? But when it comes to humans since the days of known history, things take a different turn. I think that is because, from that time, for some reason, humans started leaving their signatures on whatever they do. Also, this happens to be, at least since those times, transitory in nature. That is to say, one's priorities in life, rather the living style itself, would have been continuously changing, making whatever sign people happen to observe regarding other generations vastly different, and therefore something easily noticeable. And we have quite some ideas regarding the life followed by our ancestors, from the present times till the days of known history. Why was it blank then? But when we think of the earliest humans, things take another turn. With an idea to supplement the scant details regarding their lifestyle, let us study humans before the dawn of history a little more closely. Our forefathers of those eras would have been much different from what we are now, and it is safe to imagine them as close to their animal forefathers, which means their lifestyle would have resembled that of their forefathers, say, apes. Logically, in that case, there shouldn't be any telltale marks left of their existence, as the human habit of mementos or souvenirs is yet to begin. Also, our forefathers of that era would have lived a life without humanness, the inclination to leave one's signature in everything, and that is why we are at a loss when it comes to things that could have thrown light on our distant past. What do blank show? What can this tell us? I think this points to a giant singularity in evolution. This forced one product of evolution among scores of other forms of life to acquire this particular twist in personality, humanness. Something of significance has taken place in the world, or man, or both, that has caused the human to become unique. For example, having a desire to leave historical trails, or a penchant for finding happiness in an unpredictable manner, like engaging with things that can lead to personal discomfort, or the capacity to alter one's feelings in whatever way one wishes, sometimes even for abstract reasons, which is nothing but inventing both feelings and its causes, where none exist. I have already given an explanation for many, rather non-intuitive peculiarities observed in humans, in my book The Unsure Male, where such character traits are shown to be a part of the human remedy for the incompatibility between males and females, especially for mating. We can combine those findings with the discovery of humanness by humans, and decode our earliest days. Humans would have started their life just like all other forms of life. Also, they would have been using all their faculties to entertain themselves, just like all other forms of life. Being adept at life, just like all other forms, humans would have found no reason to dwell on things unrelated to one's life or living. Millions of years might have passed like this till one of them realized the power of abstraction, who would have been on the lookout for some remedy for the post-mating agony. That was the birth of humanness, and thereafter, history was never the same. The conclusion. This might have happened around 3000 BC, which can be thought of as the time when historical signs made their appearance. Life, however, continued with a very high mortality rate, putting a check on population increase. Next major singularity, which had the power to alter human future substantially, was Industrial Revolution. This, needless to say, has come as a result of the large-scale use of abstraction to escape from the woes. It worked well. The populace happened to get rising levels of comfort, which led to more instances of abstraction. Abstraction became the primary nature of humans, all other facets of human expressions taking a subdued position. Thus we have, depending on the source or trigger of the abstraction, human societies controlled by arts, science, religion, politics, love, or terror. We are of course finding fault with religion, politics, etc., but the real culprit, our propensity for abstraction, is always going scot-free, perpetuating human misery. The earliest of human ancestors appeared 5 to 7 million years ago, but why do we have this large gap with no signs of life, from millions of years back when human race began, to a few millenniums BCE where we have the first signs of a civilization, and why we have too many signs of human existence since then?